When I was about 8 or maybe 9 years old, we were on vacation with my family, with my dad, with my mom, with my 3 younger siblings. We were in the mountains, outside of cities, so the sky was beautiful. And on the way back home late one night, my dad stopped us in our tracks, and he got very excited, as he usually does. And he said, "Kids, look up into the sky." And I was the oldest, and as the oldest, I knew it was my duty to look up into the sky and be properly amazed. And so I looked up into the sky, and he showed us the Cassiopeia, which I think many of you know. It's a constellation shaped like a W, and it's very easy to spot. And that wasn't what he wanted to show us. What he wanted to show us was a small smudge of light, a little smudge right below the Cassiopeia. And some of you may have already seen this smudge of light. I hadn't when I was 8 or 9 years old. I'd never seen that before. And I remember this moment very distinctly, even though I knew that the night sky has stars that twinkle and planets that just shine steady. I did not know what light smudges are. And I've shared this moment since the past 2 years, since my selection as an astronaut. I've shared this moment quite a bit. And despite me having spoken these words a lot, I always, and that's why I'm going to stop for a second, I always get goosebumps. And I'm going to enjoy my goosebumps here. Because I remembered this moment so clearly, because I realized how the curiosity in my mind was sparked. Because I remember, what is a light smudge doing up in the sky? What is this? My dad was very quick with the explanation, and he went on. And he said, that's the Andromeda Galaxy, the only other galaxy you can see in the night sky with your bare eyes. You don't need a telescope to see it. And I encourage many of you to go out and try and see it with by yourself. And I thought, oh, okay, that's nice, Andromeda Galaxy. And then my brain hit a full stop, because my brain caught on the word other galaxy. Because I was 8 or 9 years old, so I knew we were on the planet Earth. I knew back then there were 9 planets, all circling the sun. I knew we were on a not so spectacular place in the Milky Way galaxy. I did not know that there were other galaxies out there all the time. And that the light from these galaxies takes millions of years to come and reach us, which meant, and that blew me away, that what I'm seeing is 2 million years in the past. So I have no idea what is out there. I know nothing. And realizing this as a child, and just speaking these words and realizing it again, just really blows my mind. And back then it sparked, I'm very sure of this sparked my passion for space and my passion for trying to understand our surroundings and our environment and where we actually are. What are we even doing here in this universe? Where is our place? Why are we here? And then my dad topped it off, and he explained to me that we are all made of stars. What? So I'm made of a star. I'm made of hydrogen and helium, partly. You are all made of stars. We are all made of stars. That is a very beautiful thought. So basically, you could also say, some say this, that we're brothers and sisters of the universe, and all brothers and sisters of each other. And when I thought about what I wanted to share with you today, watching these videos and watching all of you and your emotions and seeing your families and all these friendly faces, I thought, as your sister, I can give you maybe some pieces of advice. It's going to be 3 pieces of advice from my training as an astronaut and from my life experience. So that is what I will be talking about in the next couple of minutes. And most of all, I want you to enjoy the fact a little bit that we are all made of stars. I think that's something that is a very, at least for me, that's a very special feeling that I like to enjoy, and that's something that I wanted to definitely share with you first. I was 8 or 9, like I said, and the thing is, you don't really, while I did have a passion for space, you don't just decide to become an astronaut. At first, you choose a career more on the Earth, so it's not so easy to go up into space. So I thought, what are my likings, what are my interests? I was also very interested in understanding how us humans interact with the environment and vice versa. So I became a meteorologist at the University of Bonn. Actually never had a graduation ceremony, unfortunately. But I studied meteorology, and I loved understanding how not so much loved, understanding how we humans induce climate change. That's not so much something to love, it's something to study with a scientific mind and be amazed at everything that we can do and to destroy the environment. But it is something that I was very curious about and that enables a lot of research and was very fascinating to me. But I never forgot that as a plan B, and growing up in a space environment, because my dad is also an astronaut, I always remembered plan B, if the chance ever comes up, I want to be an astronaut too. The thing is, the way as a European national, and I'm German, of German nationality, and grew up in Europe, there's one way, or there was one way, to become an astronaut, and that is to apply at the European Space Agency. 2008, I had my diploma for 1 month. ESA opened an astronaut selection. I got very excited because I'm fresh out of college. I'm ready to go. So I thought, let's apply. This is my chance to fulfill my dream. Quite unfortunately, my dad was actually the head of the selection, so I thought that's a hitch I'll figure out later, because maybe that's not such a good idea if, dad, daughter, might not be so realistic that I'll be chosen, but whatever. So I went up and asked him, and we were talking about the selection procedure and some procedures for that. And I remember I felt a bit frustrated that he didn't ask me if I wanted to apply. And he was cooking in the kitchen, so he's stirring the pot. And he's about my size. And so I asked, after a while, I said, Dad, why aren't you asking for my application? What's up with that? And he has glasses, so he looked over his glasses and he was like, forget it. I was like, what? So when he signs autographs to other kids, he writes, your dreams are your wings, but I'm supposed to forget my dream. So I was a bit like, I was shocked a little bit first. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, no. What I mean is, it doesn't mean you're not talented or that I don't want to encourage you, but you need to go and first work in a team environment. You need to get a little bit more of life skills because 10,000s of people are going to apply and you're not really going to stand a chance if you're just fresh out of college. So I thought that sounds reasonable. He also said, in 5 years, there will be another application process, so finish your PhD on time. I didn't. And go ahead and pursue some more of what you want to do, what you want to be passionate about, maybe have a kid or two. I had 3. And then apply in 5 years. Unfortunately for me, ESA couldn't decide on who they wanted to choose, so they wanted to have 2 or maybe 4 astronauts. They chose 6, and 1 more as backup. And that meant that to this day, there's never been another chance for me to apply at ESA. Fortunately for me, here in Bremen, Claudia Kessler thought to herself, every other spacefaring nation in the world has sent a woman into space. Germany has had 11 men go up into space and is currently training its 12th man. I want to change that. And so, the space industry in Bremen is very strong. And I'm here a lot for my training as well. And I truly appreciate the city of Bremen as a space, how do you say this? Fort of space. And Claudia, here in this fort of space, decided she is going to start the first commercial astronaut selection program worldwide. Because with new space coming up, with SpaceX, with Boeing, making space more accessible for everybody, we're also going to need more astronauts. So a lot of you, 403, who wanted to be an astronaut when they grew up? That's good. That's good. The others can also raise their hand. That's okay. So that is something that is actually very much likely for many of you, because with new space coming up, with SpaceX making spaceflight a lot cheaper, there will be a lot more opportunities. So Claudia Kessler decided, I'm going to send the first German scientific female astronaut to the space station in 2020, or not earlier than 2020. It's going to be later, I can tell you that. And she started a selection procedure. So she got ESA's selection procedure team from the German Aerospace Agency, DLR, to also run our astronaut selection process. And it was 409 candidates. So 403, 409, I really like that. And I'm going to ask all of you to raise your hand really quick for the very first question of the astronaut selection procedure that came up in every single selection round. So all the graduates need to raise their hand for me right now. Quick, yes. See, now I know you're awake. That's good. And the question I'm going to ask, which came up during every single selection procedure, every single step of the way, how many of you, and leave your hand up if you can answer with yes, how many of you slept more than 7.5 hours last night? A few. That's good. A tip. The average is 7.5 hours of sleep. You may lower your hands, thank you. That is a question that came during every single selection procedure, and they wanted us to sleep 7.5 hours. I have a baby, so I don't sleep 7.5 hours at the moment, but 7.5 is, if anybody ever asks you, that's the average. And part of the selection procedure, I'm not going to go into full detail, but part of it is you don't have to be a genius in every single category. You don't have to be a crack at math, physics, English, cognitive abilities, memorizing numbers, spatial orientation. You just need to be average or better. So I thought that was good. But you have to be very versatile in all areas of your life. And part of the selection procedure, this is going to be sisterly start tip number 1, there was periods in the selection. There was one day where we had 9 hours of continuous testing, back to back, a few breaks in between. And imagine this, there's 90 of you all together, and only 2 of them you can make it, and they're all really, really smart, and they all seem much smarter than you are. So I was also a bit nervous at times, and there was one test where I thought, I'm going to crack this, because I'm very good with numbers and a lot of information. I like doing that. I like playing with numbers, and I'm usually very good at it. And in this case, there was a test, there were 2 of us, and we were only allowed to communicate through a microphone, so we had to push a button if we wanted to talk. And then we had to share information, and she had some information, I had the rest. You can imagine this type of setting. We were supposed to solve a puzzle that couldn't really be solved, and we all had missing only half of the information that we needed. So we had to share very quickly in 1 minute how to solve this problem. And I made the very simple mistake of actually always just pressing the button wrong. So the psychologist who was evaluating our test kept sighing, and she was like, Frau Thiele-Eich, stop. No, Frau Thiele-Eich, she can't hear you. And so in my mind, I did this mistake again and again and again, and I already thought, this is it. There was a moment where I thought, you can just pack your bags, you can get up and walk out of this room, because there's no way they're ever going to take you. And that is something where, luckily enough, I reflected on this, and it was a very uncomfortable feeling. And that is something, self-reflection, we've heard it from Professor Huisman, we've heard it from Professor Kappas, was also, here you are. I listened very closely, and both of them have already shared this, that it's a crucial key element for your life to be able to self-reflect. So you know you're made of a star. You know that, but know what else you're made of. Know what your emotions, what emotions you have, know what triggers you. And I can tell you, it's much more interesting if you look at the uncomfortable emotions that arise, and if you try to understand why are they there and how can I work with them through the rest of my life. That is something, so we've said it once, we've said it twice, I've said it a 3rd time. That is the key takeaway that I think is, has been very valuable to me in the last 10 years, and maybe is also valuable to you. We saw some pictures of my training. We saw the parabolic flights where the plane does parabolas, and yes, your belly also does parabolas, so your belly goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down. You're weightless at the top of the parabola, which is an incredible feeling. Your stomach hits 2G at the bottom of the parabola, which is a not so nice feeling. And you do this 10 times in a row. We also did centrifuge training. I got my private pilot's license, and I'm also right now currently at this moment working on obtaining my diver's license, so I'm being a certified open water diver. Do any of you here dive as well? A lot. Do you have a pool? Can I go? Because it's warm. No. That's very nice. I've never actually been diving before, so this is something that was very new to me. And during my 3rd dive, so you're underwater, you're relying on this mouthpiece that's feeding you oxygen, and you're in a pool. And I'm honestly not the most water-affine person, so there's always Band-Aids and hair swimming around, and I'm not really fond of that and was never really drawn to water, even as a child. So I'm sitting on a platform 3 meters below in the pool, and my instructor was teaching me how to float my mask. So you bend down and you let water run into your mask for whatever obscure reason you would want to do that. So you're sitting there, you can't see anything because the water is all in your mask. And then you hold your mask, and then you breathe out through your nose. And supposedly, the water comes out of your mask. In my case, I ended up losing my mouthpiece, swallowing water, inhaling water through my nose, and my brain was like, panic, 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 you're dying. So this is something, again, where self-reflection, my other half of the brain, luckily kicked in and said, okay, you might be dying, but you have life insurance, so that's good for your husband and kids. So. And then I had the problem that to top all of this off, I didn't know this is part of my job. Unexpectedly, there was a surprise journalist following my training, and he was sitting next to me taking pictures of me. So my brain was saying, you need to go up, you need to get air, lady. right now. And I was thinking, I can't fail. I can't show my weakness right now because that's going to sound really sucky in the article about me. so I was sitting on the platform, and then I managed to calm myself down. And then the diving instructor, I was still feeling a little bit panicky. My brain was not very comfortable yet. I had water. I'd swallowed water. I'd breathed in water. My mask was still half full. And I needed to calm. And she didn't realize this. My eyes didn't evidently flash panic mode. And I was sitting there, and she asked me to do the exercise again, take off my mask and float around the pool for 30 seconds and come back. And I knew there was no way I could do this, but I was extremely uncomfortable sharing that with her. So there's a hand sign, you say problem, and then you say that you swallowed water. You can, that's how you communicate underwater. And I was really thinking, okay, Insa, just go and do it, because I was so uncomfortable of sharing. I was a little afraid of admitting my failure here. And I liked that the undergraduates spoke about this. You need to be able, start tip number 2 from your sister Lee, you need to be able to accept the fact that you will fail, and it's much nicer if you could just come out and say it. So I did. I said, I have a problem. I need to just take 5 minutes. And we just sat there for 5 minutes, which is a very long time if people are waiting for you to get on with it. But it was a very positive learning experience also. And that's also actually why we astronauts do trainings like getting your pilot's license and your diving certificate, because moments like these are important for when you're up on the space station and something goes wrong. You need to be able to communicate if you were afraid or what is going on, and if maybe you even made a mistake. And also, I'm going to add on, get life insurance. That's very helpful. That's something you really need. For the final tip, because I don't want to take too much of your time, and my time is closing, I work 70% at the University of Bonn as a meteorologist, and I work in climate change as well. That's where I also did my PhD on the impact of climate change on hydrology in Bangladesh. I work 70% there. I work 50% training as an astronaut, which is usually a bit overtime. I do a lot of public speaking events, and I have 3 kids. So I know that life can sometimes get very busy. And for you all, who are maybe all not yet 30, the 30s are your rush hour of your life, and maybe this day today also feels a little bit like everything is just rushing by you. The third tip I have, and this is something I've also really had to learn in the past 2 years, is there's so much great energy and great activity that we all get to partake in. I saw the videos. I really regretted not being able to study here. I really wish I had known about this university. It seems like such a great place to have spent the past year or maybe 3 years or maybe even more. It's wonderful. I don't know if you would have let me do my PhD for 8 years, which I did at the University of Bonn. I'm not so sure that would have flown here, but it seems like such a wonderful place. And now that your time here is coming to an end, and you may or may not know what you're doing with your life and what you want to do right after tomorrow, but just for today, where everything seems to be rushing by, where your families are here, where your friends are here, where you maybe also want to enjoy what you have all accomplished in the past years, there's a little exercise that I use when I do my training. There's something about it when your calendar is really full. You haven't been home in 2 weeks. You don't even unpack your suitcase anymore because there's no point. You go to meetings at 9 in the morning. You do some scientific work over lunch. You have some PR and interviews at 2 p.m. And then you get home at 6 and realize, oh, at 7 I have a flying lesson. Great. So it seems sometimes it's very difficult when you're so exhausted to not just take a moment and pause and not say, oh, I have to go to a flying lesson, but to say, wow, I get to go to a flying lesson. That's really awesome. And so what I sometimes do is, if you just manage to just pause yourself in the moment, and that was also addressed earlier, I unfortunately forgot by whom, where you were asked in your orientation week to pause and take that moment and then share the delta and reflect on the delta. An easy way to do that is to just use your 5 senses, so to just see what is around you, to hear what you can hear, to smell, maybe not too closely because it is very warm, to feel what you're touching, and then I always forget the 5th one. I wrote it down. Maybe somebody can also. Taste, thank you. I always forget taste. So you have the 5 senses, and if you manage to just put one moment onto the 5 senses, it's much easier to remember them. And it's also a nice way of just mindfully being in the moment and enjoying all that is here and all that you get to do and all that you also have accomplished. Maybe that's a nice way for you to cherish this moment today. And before I close, that is my third tip, by the way. And before I close, I want to thank you all very, very much for inviting me here, for me being able. I've been in Bremen a lot. I was never been this far out of Bremen, actually. I was kind of wondering how that is as a student, but I'm sure it must be. This is a very awesome campus. My kids are 9, so I'll see. Maybe we can send them here sometime. I want to close right now with some words to the class of 2019, because you just graduated, you just moved your tassel, which I would agree with the computer scientist, that is the moment where you graduate. So to those of you who didn't do it, I saw some of you, you can just do it now. Class of 2019, you are all made of stars, the rest of you as well, but you are all made of stars. You did it. You are now finished, and I think, personally, that deserves a huge round of applause to all 3 segments. So, congratulations. And with that, I wish I had a rocket ship that I could just hop on and fly off to. I don't, so I'm just going to exit the stage with this. But I wanted to just tell all of you, congratulations from the bottom of my heart. I'm very impressed by all of this here and seeing such a diverse campus. Trust me when I tell you, this is a very rare sight that I think many of you will find in later years. Will have. You may not know this now, maybe you do, but this will really enrich your life experience. It's such a diverse group of graduates I have never seen before, and this is something very special. And just for that, I wish all of you, family, friends, and also maybe the faculty who can now send off their little ducklings to fly away, a wonderful day, and thank you very much for having me here.